What if the man you love most walks away because the world refuses to accept your truth? In the pulsing heart of New York City, Jack Thompson commanded the top floor of a sleek glass tower on Fifth Avenue. At 35, he was the undisputed CEO of Technova, the cybersecurity firm that had quietly become a Wall Street darling. His days blurred between board meetings, venture capital pitches, and the quiet satisfaction of watching stock prices climb. But every evening, when the city lights flickered on, Jack stepped into a different world, one he shared with Levi Ramirez. Levi was 32, a freelance graphic designer with warm brown eyes that always seemed to see straight through Jack's carefully built armor. They had met 5 years earlier at a quiet charity auction for LGBTQ youth shelters. Jack had been there only because a client insisted. Levi had designed the event program. One shared laugh over overpriced wine led to coffee the next morning, then late-night talks that stretched until dawn. Their love was never loud or flashy. It lived in the way Levi left fresh coffee on the counter before Jack's 6 a.m. runs, in the way Jack cleared his schedule every Friday so they could cook together in Levi's small Brooklyn apartment. They kept their relationship private, not out of shame, Jack told himself, but practicality. Technova's conservative investors, the board's old guard members, the media that loved tearing down success stories. One day, Jack would whisper against Levi's shoulder, "We won't have to hide." That day never came. Instead, on a crisp October morning in 2023, Jack's phone lit up with alerts before he even reached the office. A gossip site had posted grainy photos from their Labor Day weekend in the Hamptons, Levi's hand resting on Jack's back as they walked along the beach, a stolen kiss under the boardwalk. The headline screamed, "Technova CEO's secret same-sex romance exposed. Investors panic." Within an hour, the stock dipped 3 points. By noon, 3 major clients had emailed cancellations citing reputational risk. Jack sat frozen at his desk, the city skyline mocking him through floor-to-ceiling windows. Levi arrived unannounced at 6, his face pale under the fluorescent lights of the executive suite. He still wore the same gray sweater Jack had bought him last Christmas. "They found my name," Levi said quietly, voice cracking. "My mother called from Ohio. She's crying, Jack. My boss at the agency said 3 accounts pulled because they don't want that kind of association. I can't breathe here anymore." Jack stood, reaching for him. "We face it together. I'll issue a statement. I'll protect you. Protect us." Levi stepped back, eyes glistening. "You don't get it. The world isn't waiting for your statement. Every comment section is calling me your dirty secret. My family thinks I've ruined my life. I love you, Jack. God, I love you so much it hurts. But loving you right now means losing everything else I have left." The silence that followed stretched like a fault line. Jack begged, offered to go public immediately, to fly Levi's parents to New York, to do anything. Levi only shook his head, tears finally spilling. "I need space. I need to figure out who I am when the spotlight isn't burning us alive." He turned toward the door, pausing only once. "Please don't hate me for this." The door clicked shut. Jack sank into his chair, the award plaques on the wall suddenly meaningless. For the first time in his life, success tasted like ash. He stared at the empty chair where Levi had sat so many evenings, sharing takeout and dreams, and the question echoed louder than any boardroom debate. What if the man you love most walks away because the world refuses to accept your truth? That night, Jack didn't go home to the penthouse. He drove aimlessly through Manhattan, past the brownstone where they had first said, "I love you," past the cafe where Levi sketched ideas on napkins while Jack pretended to read market reports. When he finally pulled over near the Brooklyn Bridge, the city lights blurred through unshed tears. For years, he had told himself his caution was strength. Now it felt like cowardice. His phone buzzed, texts from board members demanding damage control, from his conservative older sister in Connecticut asking if the rumors were true. He silenced it all. In the quiet dark, Jack Thompson, CEO, felt smaller than he ever had. The next morning, the storm only grew. Headlines multiplied. A rival firm leaked an internal memo questioning Teknova's values. Jack's assistant fielded frantic calls while he stared at the same photo that had started everything. Levi's smile, unguarded and happy, inches from his own. By afternoon, the board called an emergency session. Jack walked in head high, but inside he was unraveling. One director, an older man with a silver mustache, cleared his throat. "We're not saying you can't live your life, Jack. We're saying timing matters. Investors are skittish. Perhaps a leave of absence." Jack cut him off, voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. "I'm not hiding anymore." The words left his mouth before he could weigh them, and the room went still. For the first time, he felt the weight of truth pressing against his ribs like freedom and terror at once. He left the meeting early, drove to Levi's apartment in Williamsburg, and stood outside the door for 20 minutes before knocking. No answer. A neighbor mentioned Levi had left with a suitcase that morning. Jack's chest tightened until breathing hurt. Back in his car, he gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. The man who had built a billion-dollar company from nothing now sat paralyzed by the simplest question. Who was he without the person who had made every victory worth celebrating? He drove to the only place he could think of, Central Park, where they had picnicked on lazy Sundays. Sitting on their usual bench, Jack pulled out his phone and typed a single draft email to the entire company. Effective immediately, Teknova will implement full LGBTQ inclusion policies. No more silence. No more fear. His thumb hovered over send. One click and everything changed. One click and he might lose the empire he had sacrificed years to build. But the memory of Levi's tear-streaked face pushed him forward. He hit send. By evening the inbox exploded. Support from younger staff, outrage from a few veterans, cautious praise from allies. Jack leaned back in his office chair, the city lights now feeling less mocking and more like witnesses. The first step was taken. But Levi was gone, and the emptiness inside him stretched wider than the Hudson. He whispered into the quiet room, "I'm sorry I waited too long." The days that followed blurred into a haze of crisis management and sleepless nights. Jack canceled personal appearances, hired a PR firm that specialized in reputation repair, and began the long process of damage control. Yet every victory felt hollow. Investors who had threatened to pull out slowly returned after his public memo. But Jack barely noticed. His mind kept replaying the moment Levi walked away, the quiet finality of that door closing. He started therapy, something he had always dismissed as unnecessary for strong men. The therapist, a calm woman named Dr. Patel, asked the questions he had avoided for years. What does love look like when no one is watching, Jack? He had no answer. Friends reached out. His college roommate Marcus, now an openly gay marketing executive in Los Angeles, flew in for a weekend. They sat on Jack's rooftop terrace overlooking the East River, beers in hand. "You did the right thing coming out to the company," Marcus said. "But you can't outrun grief, man. Levi leaving wasn't just about the scandal. It was about the years you asked him to stay in the shadows." The words stung because they were true. Jack had always promised soon, but soon had never arrived. That night he stared at old photos on his phone. Levi laughing at a beach bonfire, Levi asleep on his chest during a flight to Chicago, and felt the first real crack in the armor he had worn since college. Meanwhile, Levi's absence echoed everywhere. Jack found one of Levi's sketchbooks still on the coffee table, pages filled with half-finished designs for Teknova's new app interface. He traced the lines with his finger, remembering how Levi's hand had felt steady and warm. The grief wasn't loud. It was a constant low hum beneath every decision. When Jack addressed the company town hall via video, announcing expanded benefits for same-sex partners and anti-discrimination training, the applause from employees felt distant. He wanted Levi to see it, to know the change had started because of him. But Levi's number went straight to voicemail every time. By the end of the month, Jack's sister Claire arrived from Connecticut unannounced. She had never known about Levi. Jack had kept that part of his life locked away even from family. Over dinner in his penthouse, she set down her fork. Mom and Dad are worried. They saw the news. They want to know if you're okay. Jack told her everything, the 5 years, the love, the sudden exit. Claire listened without judgment, then hugged him tightly. You deserve someone who stays through the storm, Jack. But you also deserve to stop hiding from us. For the first time in weeks, he cried in front of another person. The release felt like permission to breathe again. Yet the nights remained the hardest. Alone in the king-sized bed that still smelled faintly of Levi's cologne, Jack replayed every argument, every moment he had chosen caution over courage. The question that had started it all haunted him. What if the man you love most walks away because the world refuses to accept your truth? He whispered it into the darkness like a prayer, like a curse. And somewhere in the city, Levi was asking himself the same thing. Weeks turned into a fragile new normal. Jack threw himself into work with a ferocity that impressed even the skeptics on the board. He personally oversaw the rollout of Technova's new diversity initiative, sitting in on focus groups with LGBTQ employees who shared stories of hiding their partners at company events. Listening to them, Jack saw his own reflection, years of careful smiles and vague pronouns. He began mentoring a young software engineer named Alex who had just come out to his team. Don't wait, Jack told him one afternoon in the break room. The cost is higher than you think. Alex nodded, eyes bright with gratitude, and Jack felt the first small spark of purpose beyond profit margins. But purpose couldn't fill the Levi-shaped hole. One rainy Thursday, Jack found himself standing outside Levi's favorite coffee shop in Williamsburg, the same place they used to meet after work. He ordered Levi's usual oat milk latte with extra cinnamon and sat at their corner table. The barista recognized him from the news and offered a sympathetic smile. Jack left the untouched coffee on the table and walked out, chest tight. That evening he called Marcus again. I keep thinking if I had just come out sooner, maybe he wouldn't have left. Marcus's voice was gentle over the line from California. Maybe. Or maybe the pressure would have hit you both earlier. You can't rewrite the past, Jack. You can only decide what the next chapter looks like. The next chapter arrived in the form of an invitation Jack almost deleted. The National Business Leadership Council had nominated him for their annual Innovator of the Year award, largely because of the bold inclusion policies he had implemented in the wake of the scandal. The ceremony was 6 months away in Washington, D.C. Accepting the nomination meant more public scrutiny, more questions about his personal life. Jack stared at the email for a long time before replying yes. If he was going to stand on a stage, he wanted it to mean something bigger than stock prices. Meanwhile, Levi had moved temporarily to Philadelphia, staying with an old art school friend. Jack learned this through a mutual acquaintance who had seen Levi at a gallery opening. The news hit like a fresh bruise. Jack spent that night pacing the penthouse, imagining Levi sketching new designs, maybe meeting someone else who didn't carry the weight of boardrooms and headlines. The jealousy surprised him, raw and unfamiliar. He had always prided himself on control, yet here he was, unraveling over the possibility that Levi might heal without him. Family dynamics shifted too. Jack's parents flew in from Florida for a weekend. His father, a retired accountant who had never discussed feelings openly, sat across the kitchen island and said quietly, "Son, I wish you'd told us sooner. We love you. The rest we'll figure out." His mother hugged him so tightly Jack felt the years of unspoken distance melt. For the first time, Jack brought Levi's name into the conversation without flinching. "He was the best part of me," he admitted. His mother nodded. "Then honor that by becoming the man he believed you could be." That conversation unlocked something. Jack started volunteering at the same youth shelter where he and Levi had first met. Every Tuesday evening, he mentored teens navigating their own coming-out stories. One boy, 17-year-old Miguel, reminded Jack so much of his younger self, bright, terrified, hiding from his immigrant parents, that Jack stayed late one night just listening. "I'm scared they'll stop loving me," Miguel whispered. Jack answered from the heart. "Love that's conditional isn't love. The people who matter will stay. And the ones who don't, they teach you how strong you really are." Driving home afterward, Jack realized he was giving the advice he had needed 5 years earlier. Back at Technova, the company culture began to transform visibly. Rainbow flags appeared in the lobby after employee vote. Pride Month planning meetings filled the calendar. Jack received handwritten notes from staff thanking him for making the office feel safer. Yet every success carried Levi's shadow. Jack kept a small sketch Levi had drawn of the two of them on his desk, simple lines capturing their hands intertwined. He touched it each morning like a talisman. 3 months after the breakup, Jack received a text from an unknown number. "I saw the article about the new policies. Proud of you. No more words, no invitation to reply." Jack stared at the screen until it blurred. He typed and deleted a dozen responses before simply sending back a single heart emoji. Felt both too much and not enough. That night he allowed himself to hope, just a little, that healing might still include reconciliation. But hope was dangerous. It kept him awake replaying memories until dawn. The award nomination brought fresh media attention. Interviews requested details about his journey. Jack gave careful answers, always circling back to the importance of authenticity in leadership. Privately, he wrestled with the fear that the award would feel empty if Levi wasn't there to see it. He began writing the acceptance speech in his head during long runs along the Hudson, practicing lines about turning pain into progress. Each revision hurt, but each revision also healed a small piece of the man who had once been too afraid to hold his partner's hand in public. By the 4-month mark, Jack had changed in ways he could measure. His reflection in the mirror showed sharper cheekbones from stress but steadier eyes. He no longer flinched when colleagues asked about his personal life. When a reporter cornered him at a tech conference and asked, "How did the scandal change you?" Jack answered without hesitation, "It forced me to stop living for everyone else's comfort and start living for my own truth." The quote went viral. Technova's stock recovered fully. Yet inside, the quiet ache remained, the knowledge that growth had come at the cost of the one relationship that had made success feel like home. Levi's silence stretched on. Jack respected it, even when every fiber wanted to drive to Philadelphia and beg for another chance. Instead, he channeled the energy into something tangible. He quietly funded a scholarship at the youth shelter in Levi's name. Anonymous for now, but the gesture felt like keeping a promise he had never voiced aloud. "For the boy who taught me courage," he wrote in the private donor note. The act brought a fragile peace. Not closure, but forward motion. As winter approached, Jack stood on his rooftop one evening watching snow dust the city. The question that had once tormented him now felt like a compass rather than a wound. What if the man you love most walks away because the world refuses to accept your truth? The answer, he was beginning to understand, was that you learn to love yourself enough to keep walking anyway. The stage in Washington waited 6 weeks away. Jack straightened his shoulders against the cold wind. For the first time, he believed he might actually deserve to stand there. The holiday season arrived with forced cheer and unavoidable memories. Jack spent Thanksgiving with his parents in Florida, the first time he had brought his full truth to the family table. His mother set an extra place out of habit, then quietly removed the plate when she saw Jack notice. "Old habits," she said softly. Over turkey and pie they talked about Levi, not as a scandal but as a person they wished they had met. Jack's father surprised him by saying, "He sounds like he loved you well. That matters." The words lodged in Jack's throat. He nodded instead of crying. Back in New York, the office threw its first official Pride-themed holiday party. Employees wore rainbow pins and danced under string lights. Jack gave a short speech about belonging, and the applause felt genuine. Yet when the music slowed and couples paired off, Jack slipped outside to the terrace. Marcus had flown in again, and they stood shoulder to shoulder watching the skyline. "You're different," Marcus observed. "Stronger. But you still look like you're waiting for someone." Jack didn't deny it. "I'm learning how to wait for myself first." The new year brought the award ceremony closer. Jack flew to Washington for rehearsals, standing on the empty stage practicing his speech under harsh lights. Each run-through tightened the knot in his stomach. He wanted the words to honor Levi without making the night about loss. Draft after draft landed in the trash until one night at 2 a.m. He wrote the honest version. This award isn't mine alone. It belongs to every person who chose truth over comfort, who turned heartbreak into momentum. He read it aloud to the empty auditorium and felt something settle. Meanwhile, unexpected news arrived via email. Levi's art friend in Philadelphia had forwarded an invitation to a gallery show. Levi's new collection, Shadows and Light, featured abstract pieces that Jack recognized instantly. The curve of a skyline at dusk, intertwined hands dissolving into city lights, a single figure walking away from a glowing tower. Jack bought a ticket without thinking. The night of the show he flew down, heart hammering. The gallery was crowded with hipsters and critics. Levi stood near the back in a black button-down, hair a little longer, looking both familiar and changed. Their eyes met across the room. Time stopped. Levi approached first, voice low. "I didn't expect you." Jack managed to smile. "I couldn't stay away. Your work, it's beautiful. Painful, but beautiful." They stepped outside to a quiet courtyard. Levi spoke first. "I saw the scholarship. Thank you. It meant more than you know." Jack swallowed. "I needed to do something that carried your name forward. Not because I want credit. Because you deserved better than the way I kept us hidden." Levi's eyes glistened. "I left because I was scared, Jack. Not just of the world, of becoming someone who resented the man I loved. I needed to stand on my own feet first." They talked for an hour, honest, raw, without blame. No promises, but no final goodbye either. When Levi hugged him at the end, Jack felt the first real warmth since the breakup. Flying back to New York, Jack replayed the conversation. Levi was dating no one, focusing on his art. Jack was building something bigger than Technova. Both had grown in separate directions, yet the connection hadn't snapped. The possibility terrified and thrilled him equally. The weeks before the ceremony blurred into final preparations. Jack approved the last details of his speech, met with the event organizers, and even practiced walking the stage in front of a mirror at home. Friends rallied. Marcus sent a good luck video. Claire promised to fly in. Alex from the office asked to attend as his guest. Jack accepted every offer. This night would not be solitary. One afternoon he received a handwritten note delivered to the office. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. "Break a leg. I'll be watching the live stream." Jack pressed the paper to his chest and laughed for the first time in months. Light, relieved. Levi was still rooting for him from afar. That knowledge became the final piece of armor he needed. The night before the ceremony, Jack stood on his rooftop again. Snow had melted. Spring hinted in the air. He thought of every choice that had led here. The cautious years, the painful exit, the slow rebuilding. The question that had once broken him now felt answered in every step he had taken since. What if the man you love most walks away? You learn you were never half a person to begin with. You become whole enough to stand on any stage, award or not. He slept peacefully that night, the first full night's rest in half a year. Washington, D.C. glowed under May lights as Jack stepped out of the black SUV in front of the Grand Convention Center. Claire walked beside him, squeezing his arm. "You've earned this," she whispered. Inside, the ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and hundreds of influential faces. Jack's stomach performed its familiar flip, but the nerves felt different now, electric rather than paralyzing. He spotted Alex near the bar and pulled him into a quick hug. "Glad you came, kid. Tonight's for all of us." The program moved with polished precision. Speakers praised innovation, resilience, vision. When the announcer finally said, "And the Innovator of the Year award goes to Jack Thompson of Technova," the room erupted. Jack stood, buttoning his jacket, and walked the long aisle under camera flashes. On stage, the presenter, a respected senator, handed him the heavy crystal trophy. The weight felt solid, real. Jack adjusted the microphone, looked out at the sea of faces, and began. "Thank you. This award means more than I can express because it didn't come from perfect circumstances. 6 months ago, my personal life became very public in the worst way. The man I loved for 5 years chose to step away when the pressure became too much. I don't blame him. I blame the world that forced us to choose between love and safety. That moment broke me, but it also woke me up. I stopped hiding. I rewrote company policies. I started listening to voices I had once ignored, my own included. Tonight I stand here not just as a CEO, but as a man who finally understands that leadership begins with authenticity. To every young person watching who feels they must choose between truth and success, you don't. The path is harder, but it leads somewhere real. And to the man who walked away, thank you for teaching me how to walk forward. The applause rolled like thunder. Jack stepped back, trophy gleaming under the lights, and for the first time felt completely present in his own life. Backstage, Claire hugged him fiercely. Mom and Dad are crying happy tears at home. Marcus texted a string of heart emojis from California. Alex shook his hand, eyes shining. You just made my whole year, sir. The after-party swirled around him. Congratulations, photo requests, networking offers. Jack smiled through it all, but his mind kept drifting to the live stream and the one person he hoped had watched. Around midnight his phone buzzed with a simple message. Beautiful speech. You were always meant to stand there. Jack stepped outside onto a quiet balcony, city lights stretching below, and typed back, I couldn't have done it without the years we shared. Thank you for seeing me. The reply came quickly. I still do. That single exchange cracked open a door neither had dared approach. They didn't rush. Over the following weeks they exchanged careful texts. Levi sharing updates on his latest commission, Jack describing new initiatives at Technova. Conversations stayed light, respectful of the distance they had both needed. Yet each message carried an undercurrent of possibility. Jack returned to New York changed. The trophy sat on his desk beside Levi's old sketch. Employees greeted him with new warmth. Investors praised the human touch that had boosted the brand. But Jack's deepest satisfaction came from smaller moments. Watching Alex present at a company meeting with confident pride, receiving a thank you card from a parent whose son had used the scholarship Levi's name funded. These wins felt personal in ways quarterly earnings never had. One Saturday in June, Pride Month in full swing, Jack marched in the New York parade for the first time. He wore a simple Technova t-shirt with rainbow logo and walked beside employees and friends. The energy, cheers, music, colorful signs, filled spaces inside him he hadn't known were empty. Halfway down Fifth Avenue, he spotted a familiar silhouette on the sidelines. Levi, camera around his neck, capturing the crowd. Their eyes met. Levi raised the camera in a quiet salute. Jack smiled and kept walking, but the moment anchored something deep. They were both exactly where they needed to be, together and apart, healing on parallel paths. That evening they met for dinner at a small Italian place in the West Village, neutral ground, no pressure. Conversation flowed easily, laughter returning like an old friend. Levi looked healthier, eyes brighter. My art is selling better than ever, he said. Turns out pain makes good material. Jack nodded. Same here. The company is stronger. I'm stronger. They didn't discuss getting back together. They simply enjoyed being in the same room without secrets. When they parted on the sidewalk, Levi hugged him longer than necessary. I'm proud of you, Jack. Really? Jack whispered back. I'm proud of us both. The summer unfolded with gentle momentum. Jack traveled less, delegated more, and carved out time for the youth shelter. Levi visited New York occasionally for gallery meetings, and they shared coffee without expectation. Each encounter chipped away at the old pain, replacing it with quiet respect. Jack realized he no longer needed Levi to validate his worth. The award, the changed company, the new relationships with family and staff had done that. Yet having Levi in his life again, even as a friend, felt like the missing color in a painting finally restored. One August evening on the rooftop, Jack and Levi sat side by side, watching the sunset paint the skyline gold. Levi spoke softly. I left because I thought love required perfection. You taught me it only requires honesty. Jack reached over and took his hand. First time in nearly a year. And you taught me that honesty starts with myself. Their fingers intertwined naturally, the city humming below like distant applause. No grand declarations. Just two men who had walked through fire and emerged clearer, kinder, braver. The journey wasn't finished. Public scrutiny still lingered. Family adjustments continued. And old fears sometimes whispered. But for the first time, Jack understood the award wasn't the destination. It was simply proof that the path he had chosen, truth over comfort, had been the right one all along. Fall brought cooler winds and deeper conversations. Jack and Levi fell into a careful rhythm, weekend brunches, long walks in Prospect Park, evenings where they cooked together like old times but without the pressure of labels. Neither rushed to define what they were becoming. Jack had learned that forcing timelines had cost him everything once. Levi had learned that running from fear solved nothing. So they simply showed up for each other, honest and present. At Technova, the impact of Jack's changes rippled outward. The company won a national award for workplace equality. Jack accepted it quietly, crediting the team. Internally, he promoted Alex to a leadership role, watching the young man flourish. You gave me permission to be myself, Alex told him one afternoon. Jack smiled. You gave yourself permission. I just removed the obstacles. The exchange reminded him why the stage in Washington had mattered. Not for personal glory, but for clearing space for others. Family ties strengthened too. Jack's parents visited New York and met Levi over a quiet dinner. The conversation was awkward at first, then warm. Levi's easy humor won them over. Jack's father even asked about his art process. Later, alone with Jack, his mother said, "He's good for you, and you're good for him. Don't lose that again." Jack promised he wouldn't. Levi's own family in Ohio remained cautious, but progress came in small steps. His mother sent a birthday card addressed to both of them. Levi showed Jack the note with misty eyes. She's trying. Jack squeezed his shoulder. We all are. One crisp October evening, exactly 1 year after the scandal broke, they returned to the Hamptons beach where the photos had been taken. The same boardwalk, same waves. Levi carried a small canvas bag. They walked until the crowd thinned, then sat on the sand. Levi pulled out 2 simple rings, silver, unadorned. Not a proposal, he said quickly. Just a promise. That whatever we become, we do it without hiding. No more shadows. Jack took one, slipped it on, and slid the other onto Levi's finger. The metal felt cool and permanent. No more shadows, he echoed. They didn't need fireworks or grand gestures. The quiet commitment under the stars was enough. Driving back to the city, Jack glanced at Levi's profile in the dashboard glow and felt the last piece of the old wound heal. The man who had walked away had returned, not as the same person, but as a stronger one. Jack had done the same. Together they were building something new on sturdier ground. The following months solidified their path. Jack reduced his travel schedule to prioritize evenings together. Levi moved back to Brooklyn, closer but maintaining his own space. They attended Pride events as a couple openly, marched hand in hand, and faced occasional stares with calm confidence. Jack's speech at the youth shelter's annual fundraiser drew record donations. Levi designed the program cover. Their lives wove together without losing individuality, exactly what both had needed. Winter arrived with the 2nd anniversary of the award. Jack and Levi hosted a small dinner for close friends and family. Marcus flew in, Claire brought her husband, Alex attended with his new boyfriend. Laughter filled the penthouse. Later, when everyone had left, Jack and Levi stood on the rooftop under string lights. Levi rested his head on Jack's shoulder. Remember when you asked what if the world refused to accept us? Jack smiled. Yeah. Levi continued. We refused to let the world define us instead. The city lights twinkled below like silent witnesses to their journey. Jack thought back to the man who had once sat alone in his car, shattered by a closing door. That man had become someone who could stand on any stage, hold any hand, and face any tomorrow. The award had been a milestone, not the finish line. The real victory lived in the quiet nights, the honest conversations, the steady love that had survived its own breaking. Spring returned, and with it a sense of full circle. Jack stood once more on the Washington stage, this time not as a nominee but as a speaker at the same leadership summit. The audience included many of the same faces from a year earlier. He spoke about sustainability not just of businesses but of people. True innovation, he said, begins when we stop asking others to shrink so we can feel comfortable. It begins when we give everyone room to stand tall. The standing ovation lasted longer than any he had received before. Backstage, Levi waited with flowers and a proud grin. "You keep getting better at this," he teased. Jack pulled him close. "Only because I have the right audience now." Life settled into a rhythm both had once thought impossible. Technova thrived under inclusive policies that had become industry benchmarks. Levi's art career blossomed. His latest exhibition sold out in a single night. They bought a weekend house upstate. Nothing extravagant, just a cabin with a porch where they could watch deer at dawn and talk about everything and nothing. Family visits became regular. Jack's parents and Levi's mother even shared holiday meals, awkward laughter turning into genuine connection. One quiet Sunday morning in the cabin, Jack woke to find Levi already on the porch with coffee. The sun filtered through trees, painting everything gold. Jack joined him, slipping an arm around his waist. "Remember the night you left?" Levi nodded. "I thought I was protecting us both." Jack kissed his temple. "We protected ourselves by growing apart first. Then we chose to grow back together." Levi smiled. "Best decision we ever made." They sat in comfortable silence, rings catching the light. The question that had once haunted Jack now felt like ancient history. The world had refused to accept their truth once, and they had answered by refusing to let that refusal define them. In its place, they had built a life of honesty, support, and quiet strength. Months later, at the youth shelter's annual gala, Jack and Levi stood together on stage to present the scholarship that now bore both their names. Young recipients shared stories of courage, and Jack's chest swelled with something deeper than pride, purpose realized. Afterward, a teenage girl approached them. "You two give me hope," she said. Levi answered gently, "Hope is what we built when everything else fell apart. You can build it too." Driving home through the city lights, Jack glanced at Levi. Steady, present, loved. The man who had once walked away now walked beside him, stride for stride. The CEO who had lost everything had gained something infinitely more valuable, himself. And in the end, that was the only award that truly mattered. The story closes here, not because the journey ended, but because two men finally learned how to walk it together. Openly, bravely, and completely unafraid of whatever truth the world still needed to learn. In Jack and Levi's journey, we witness that the deepest wounds often become the strongest bridges. Public pressure and fear can shatter even the strongest love, yet honesty, patience, and self-work can rebuild it stronger. The lesson is simple yet life-changing. Never let the world's discomfort dictate your worth or your happiness. Choose truth every time, even when it costs everything temporary, because what you gain is a version of yourself no one can take away. Stand tall, love openly, and remember that every ending can quietly become the most beautiful beginning. That's the quiet power this story leaves behind.